Maybe an issue here. Okay. Good morning. Welcome to Koilel Baker. Today's topic is, or the title of today is, Effort versus Free Ride. Effort, hard work, strenuous effort versus getting things done automatically or having things just given to you. There was once a fellow who had a drinking problem, and his friends were trying to convince him, Yankel, you got to stop drinking. So he said, okay, I've decided only 3 times a year I'm going to drink. My birthday and on my anniversary and on Shabbos. Okay. Interesting, the Facebook is having these colors on it in the screen. I don't know what that's representing, but in any case, okay. It's very nice, special, when you learn the parsha of the week and you see its connection to what's going on at the time. Whether it's a yontif then, or it's current events, or something that happened. And in today's parsha, we have the mitzvah, which, by the way, Emer talks about all of the Yamim Tovim, all the holidays. But we have the mitzvah of counting sfira. It's a biblical commandment. You should count from the second day of Pesach all the way till Shavuos. Question if today it's D'Rabbanan or D'Oraisa, but we count. Now, what does Torah specifically tell us when it comes to counting? It says, Mimocharas HaShabbos, from the day after Shabbos, which means the day after the first day of Pesach, you should start counting from bringing of the carbon omer all the way till Shavuos. So we count for 49 days, and on the 50th day, we celebrate Shavuos. And it's a mitzvah. We make a bracha every night, and we count. Today's the 27th day, and we count as we go forth, getting closer and closer to receiving the Torah. Not only do we count in the literal sense, but we also count in the concept of self-development and refinement. We're working on ourselves, working on our midos. There's generally 7 characteristics, 7 midos that we have within ourselves. And every day, we're working on refining that, and not just on a general level, but on a very detailed level. So there's 7 midos. Each midah is consisting of another 7. And we're going all the way for 7 weeks, 49 days. We're working on our midas, trying to improve ourselves and become better people. There used to be, in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, there was a group called Tzedaikim, another group called Baitoisim. There was an offshoot of them called Karaim. Today there's a group, or I don't know if they're a continuation of them, or self-proclaimed, Karaites. And the idea of these people is very misinformed. They have decided that they only trust and only accept written Torah. What it says in Torah, clearly we keep. Anything from Torah Shebaal Peh, anything that is told to us by our sages, passed down from Moshe Rabbeinu, oral law, is out. They don't believe in it. And it causes tremendous disagreements in fundamental ideas of Torah mitzvahs. We spoke last night's class was about why we eat cholent on Shabbos. You can see it on YouTube or Facebook. And one of the reasons is because we want to negate their version of don't burn a fire on Shabbos. Their version of don't burn a fire on Shabbos is you can't have a fire lit on Shabbos, even if it was lit before. We, of course, understand it to mean, as Moshe Rabbeinu has taught us, that you can't light a fire on Shabbos, whether it's from scratch or from an existing flame. But if the fire is on, if your light's on, if your fireplace is burning, if your stove has fire on it, you don't have to turn it off before Shabbos starts. You can't cook, but you can have a fire on it. But when it comes to the mitzvah of sfira, they argue. And they say, look at the words. It says, Mimocharas HaShabbos. From the day after Shabbos, you start counting. Which means Sunday morning, start to count. Or Saturday night, start to count. Then day after Shabbos, not the day after Pesach. Okay. And they argued. And by the way, according to their understanding and their calendar, they would have Shavuos every single year on a Sunday. Okay, so this year, by the way, yes, this year it's actually works out according to the right way. is that this because the first day of Pesach was Shabbos, the day after is Sunday, so it works out. There was a debate between these tzedaikim by Teisim, we call them the Karaites, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the leader of the Jewish people after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. He was a very, very special person. He was the youngest Talmid, the youngest student of Hillel. And although he was the youngest, he's considered to be the most prominent. He was the Nasi of the Yidden at a very difficult time in history after the destruction. He has instituted many laws, enactments, gzeres, to make sure that Yiddishkeit continues the way we have it today, because Yidden were really broken. We were being sent away, exiled, and we really had to have as much help as we needed from leadership to make sure that Yiddishkeit remains. And he was very instrumental in that. It says about him that he always came to the Beis Medrash, to the house of study first, and always left last. That was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He was a Talmud of Hillel, and like his teacher, who it says Hillel was a reincarnation, a Gilgul of Moshe Rabbeinu, in a sense. He lived 120 years as well. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai also lived 120 years. Very special person. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had a debate, a public debate, with the tzedaikim, with these people that say that when Torah says from the day after Shabbos you should count Sfira, and we know, according to the tradition of our sages, and Torah Shabbal Peh, coming from Moshe Rabbeinu, that it means the day after the first day of Pesach. It doesn't mean Shabbos. And they argued about it. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai explained to them that Shabbos doesn't mean the seventh day. Shabbos means a day of rest. And a day of rest could imply any yontif. It's not necessarily the seventh day. When Torah says the seventh day of Shabbos, the day after Shabbos, it means, in this case, after Pesach. Yom Kippur is also referred to as Shabbos Shabbosaina in the same parsha, right? You could have a concept, we could have a concept where the day is called Shabbos, not the seventh day. And he said it so eloquently and described what we believe in so strongly that they had nothing to tell him back. The Gemara in Menachos, Daf Samach Hey, tells us about this debate, Samach Hey Amud Aleph, and it says like this: and no one had anything to say. There was no argument back until one guy from that group, he pulled an answer out of his sleeve. There's no basis to it. But here's what he said. Moshe Rabbeinu was kind, and he wanted to give the Jewish people a long weekend. Gemara. If you have Pesach on Shabbos, second day was Chol Hamoed, right? And then you come to Shavuos, you start counting the first day of Chol Hamoed, you come to Shavuos, it's Shabbos, and then Shavuos starts Sunday. You have a long weekend. So it wasn't because the pasuk here, pasuk there. He says, my argument is that it was designed to be this way because Moshe was kind and he wanted the Jewish people to have a long weekend. Okay. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's argument back was Moshe Rabbeinu was kind. If he was so kind as you say, then why did he keep the Jewish people in the desert for 40 years? Take them into Eretz Yisrael. I don't buy this whole kindness thing he tells them. Okay. Now, the Chachamim obviously have a tradition. By the way, this is not the reason. And the kindness, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai continued the debate and he proved them from psukim, from verses in the Torah, to show you that it means the day after Pesach. It wasn't because Moshe Rabbeinu is not kind, but that you see this in the discussion. Now, thankfully, eventually, our sages, Chazal, managed to negate all of the Baitusim, and they convinced them out of it. They won over the debate, and it actually says in Gemara that it happened right before Pesach, and therefore it's a time of joy, and we're not allowed to fast, because we're celebrating this idea that true Torah tradition was brought into Klal Yisrael, and they managed to undo or disprove the other school of thought that we only believe in the written Torah, not in the oral Torah. Without getting into the whole difference and why we believe in oral tradition and how it works, why does Torah have to be so ambiguous? Just tell us that it's the day after Pesach. You told me Pesach is the 15th day of the first month, right? Which is the 15th day of Nisan. So tell me that on the 16th day you should count from the 16th day, count Sfira. Why do you have to say the day after Shabbos? And now there's going to be an argument. They're going to say Shabbos means Shabbos, and we're going to say Shabbos means Yontif, and we're going to fight about it. Just be clear. A second question. Why? I mean, if you think about it, it's ironic. The tzedaikim are the ones that are saying Moshe Rabbeinu is kind. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the leader of the Jewish people, the Moshe Rabbeinu of his time, is telling them, I don't think he was so kind. I mean, if he was kind, he didn't say, I don't think he was kind, but he said, if he was kind, then why does he leave us in the desert for 40 years? Take us in. Okay, so it's not such a kind situation per se. So the answer is as follows. There are two schools of thought and two ways to look at life and two ways to serve Hashem, two different ways towards spirituality and a life of imbued with purpose and meaning. Let's use an example of a father's relationship with a child or a mother and an uncle's relationship with a child and an aunt. The difference is that an uncle or an aunt, they give gifts. They're very nice. They almost spoil their nephew or nieces. They're loving, caring. A father or a mother, they're also kind, loving, and caring, but they have some disciplinary things that they do. They say no much more often than the uncle or aunt do. They sometimes have to give punishments, consequences. They love the child, but it's not always yes, and it's not always spoiling the child. Now, from the child's perspective, you could say, who loves me more? My uncle, my aunt. Look, they always give gifts. They always give me rides. They're so nice, friendly, kind, loving. My parents, sometimes they give me what I want. Sometimes they say no. That could be a child's feeling. Now, obviously, we understand that the relationship and the love from the father or the mother to the children is much stronger than the love from an uncle or an aunt, right? Because it's their child. The Baitusi, the Tzedeki, these Karaites said, Moshe Rabbeinu loves us, and he wants to give us a good time. He wants to make Shavuos to be the day after Pesach, the day after Shabbos, not Pesach, after Shabbos, because he wants us to have a weekend. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai argues back and says, weekend? Why did he keep us in the desert for 40 years? Which means as follows. Yeah. They argue and say, life is about a free ride. And if you're connected to Torah and mitzvahs, everything flows, everything is given to you. You feel spiritual, holidays you coast along, everything is great. Moshe Rabbeinu feeds you whatever you need, and you're fine. The other approach says that's the uncle and aunt spoiling the nephew and niece. That's not the way we understand Torah and mitzvahs. It's not the way Moshe Rabbeinu led us for 40 years in the desert. Moshe Rabbeinu, obviously from Hashem, led us in the desert for 40 years because we went through a process of self-development and refinement. As a result of the Yidden going through in the desert for 40 years, we changed from the slave mentality, from being avadim in Egypt, to come out and be able to serve Hashem, be able to live a life in Eretz Yisrael where you have to work and you have to deal with many, many other things that are not just handed to you. It's a process. Okay, the Tzedekим say, nah, Moshe Rabbeinu, he just made sure everything is fine for us. It's not just about Sfira. It's a fundamental difference in our approach. In the words of Chassidus, it goes like this. There's something called the Isarusa de Le'ela and something called Isarusa de L'Sata. Okay, before I'm sounding Chinese, let me explain. Isarusa means an awakening from above, de Le'ela. And Isarusa de L'Sata means an awakening from below. An awakening from above means an inspiration, where a person feels inspired. They feel like doing the right thing. They want to daven. They want to learn. They want to serve Hashem. Any other temptations or choices that come their way, they're not interested. They push it away. People have these feelings. It could be on their birthday. It could be maybe on Yom Kippur. It could be a certain holiday. They get inspired, and they're interested in doing what's right. They're moving along. They want to do the right thing. Okay. But then there's a sort of lasata, where a person is not inspired. He doesn't feel this urge to go do the right thing or serve Hashem or be spiritual, but he understands that he has to. So he forces himself. This is the right thing to do. I know it's right. I'm Jewish. I have to follow what Torah says. And you get yourself to do it. It takes effort. And it takes sometimes failure. and you force yourself and you get through it. What's the difference between when Hashem inspires you and all of a sudden you have this urge to do the right thing versus when you just have it and when you have to put in your own effort? The difference is lasting effect. When a person's inspired on Yom Kippur and he feels he wants to live a life exactly the way Hashem wants and always do the right thing and make the right choices, unfortunately, it doesn't last. Why? Because you're not always standing in Shul on Yom Kippur in white clothing with certain tunes around you, and you're fasting, and you realize it's a day of judgment. You're inspired, right? The Rabbeim say that the night after Yom Kippur, what's the avodah? What do you have to work on now? Now you got to do tshuva because you're back to the real world. Okay? When you're inspired, automatically, it doesn't last. It lasts a little bit, but if it comes from your own effort and you invested in it and you tried and you worked hard, it lasts. It has an effect. It's not automatic. It's not free. And when you put in effort, yes, it's harder. And it may seem that the person that's causing you to put in the effort is not being as kind as the uncle. It's the father or the mother that's educating the child and making sure that it's not always so fun. And even if you don't want to, you still have to do it. And we insist. And I'm not your friend, I'm your parent, whatever it may be. But it comes out in a way that it helps the child. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is telling this tzedeki, you want to tell me that Shavuos is a Sunday for a long weekend and that's the goal? It should just be smooth and fun. He didn't tell him that 3-day Yontif, not everyone enjoys it so much, but that's a separate issue. But the tzedeki felt that a 3-day Yontif, or in that case a 2-day Yontif, a 3-day, is an enjoyment. It's a weekend. Moshe Rabbeinu says you have the whole Yiddishkeit, the whole Judaism, you have it wrong. It's all about effort. That's when it's lasting. So what should a person do? By the way, it's enjoyable, but it's effort. That's why it's enjoyable. What should a person do? A person, when he gets that inspiration from above, he should add his own level of effort to that. The person is inspired. He wants to do the right thing. He feels excited. He feels connected. He wants to do the right thing. What should he do? So Chassidus tells us, add your own Isarosa de Lasata after that. Look at this feeling as a boost, where Hashem says, I'm starting to push you. And now that you're into it, add your own piece and propel yourself to keep going forward. And this way, after a few days or a few hours sometimes, when that feeling of inspiration wears off, you're keeping on going with your own effort. And that own effort moves along. It keeps going. By the way, welcome to all those that are watching online. You can ask questions or comments, share it with your friends if you're on Facebook, or subscribe on YouTube. Thanks for being here. So the idea of the argument between Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and the Tzedekим is, what is Yiddishkeit about? Is it about your effort? And they said, no, it's all about easy coasting and so on. What's the difference between Torah shebichsav and Torah shebal peh, the written Torah and the oral Torah? Remember, the Tzedekim don't believe in the oral Torah. This is the same problem. Written Torah, what it says, you hear, you move on, you do what it says. Oral Torah tells you, let's understand what it means. There are 13 principles of how Torah is understood and how Torah is explained and how we derive one thing from another. That's effort. You can't just read the text and say, oh, that's what it says. Don't light a fire. Don't have a fire lit in the Gandik. You have to understand it. There are arguments. There are discussions. It's called even darkness, because you're going around, you're tapping around without direction. You're trying to figure it out. You're going through some confusion. And then you get to understanding it. That's the nature of what Torah is. How do you have a chidush? How do you have a novelty? How do you understand something greater? When you work on it, when it puts in, you have to think, and you have to understand, and you have to question, and ask, and get an answer, and there's a question on that answer. That's what Gemara is. That's what halacha is. You try to figure it out. That's effort. The tzedaikim, continuing in their way of understanding Torah, they come and say, nah, it's easy coasting. It's supposed to be fun. Put an effort, try to figure it out, tell me what to do, and that's it. And Torah is designed that way, that a person should put in his own ma'amatz, his own effort, trying and make it work. There's a story about a teacher. His name is Rabbi Alexander Ben Nun, actually, and he was a teacher in Eretz Yisrael, part of the Chabad school systems. And he was really a special educator and very involved in teaching his students. And unfortunately, he became ill. This is in 1959. He got ill, and he was not able to give the classes to his students. He couldn't speak. He was able to be there, everything was fine, but something with his throat, he couldn't talk. So he wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and part of his letter was a complaint. I'm trying to teach, and I have all these students in this school. I don't know what age it was, and I can't speak. Rebbe writes back to him a letter and says like this: you should understand that now you have the ability to educate your students in a very different way. In a very different way. That let them speak. Till now, you're just talking and telling them the information, and they're listening to it. So it's being fed to them, they're receiving it. Now, let's do real education. You stand, watch them, and encourage them to try to figure it out. Encourage them to say it. Obviously, they have to be taught when it's necessary and so on. Have them daven and have that excitement. Explain to them that now they have to do their part. That's education. Don't just give them everything, right? Don't give them the answers to the questions. Have them try to figure it out. That's education. The Rebbe continues and says, I have the letter here. It's printed in Chelik Yud Ches, the 18th volume of Igros Kodesh, where the Rebbe says like this, that right here, that by the way, all this explanation is not to justify why you have an illness and you can't speak. Okay, we should hope that with God's help you come back to full healing and you'll be fine and so on and so forth. Obviously, we're not saying a person should not be able to talk so that his students could do it themselves. It's in general, even when you have an answer to why something is difficult, we're not encouraging that difficulty remain. We're trying to have that change. We want that to become better. But if you're looking for an explanation, the Rebbe tells him, you should know that this is an opportunity that they should do better and be educated properly by doing so. We have a question online. If you have time, please explain deeply how to work on midas every day of counting Eimer. Okay, it's a different class, but maybe we'll be able to explain that, of how this self-development works on every day of the Eimer. So the idea is, the reason why Torah tells us in this ambiguous way that the day after Shabbos start counting, when you could have said clearly the 16th day of Nisan start counting, is because we wanted to take effort. We wanted to come as a result of trying to figure it out, of understanding. That's what Yiddishkeit's about. You put an effort. Okay. There's two ways to learn. You can come to a class and listen. Okay. Or you could try to understand. You could ask questions. You could think about it after. You could put in your own effort. Right. When it comes to davening, the whole point of davening, it says the imohis, our matriarchs, they were Karaites, they were barren, they didn't have children initially. Sarah didn't have a child, took a long time. Rivka didn't have children for many years. Rachel didn't have children for many years. Why was that? The Eibishter wanted them to daven. He wanted them to pray, to put an effort and say, Hashem, please help me. That was the whole reason. The point of davening is that a person says, Eibishter, I want things to change. And I'm putting in my effort, I'm trying. I really want this to be different. That's what Hashem is looking for. Don't just say the words. Put in your heart and soul. Try to understand it. So when it comes to learning Torah, there's three pillars that the world stands on, right? Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. The Mishnah tells us the world exists on these three things: learning of Torah, prayer, and kindness. Every person is a mini world. And we also exist with three pillars within our own lives: learning Torah and prayer and kindness. So in our learning, we have to put an effort. You can't just receive. You have to try to understand. You have to try to figure it out. You have to think about it. When it comes to davening, don't just say words. Ask, beg, get into it. Right? It's called an avodah. It's an effort because it takes work. Right? It's not just easy coasting. It's a type of mitzvah which davening is about kavanah. You have to verbalize the words. It's about kavanah. And kavanah means intention. You have to think. You have to focus. It's effort. And when it comes to kindness, a person asks you for a favor, you could just do it. And easy, fine, done. Or you could put an effort. And you could tell them, let me try to help you find a job. You could say, what else do they need? You could do it easy. Right? It's just a free ride. Not free, but you help them and then you move on. Or you could put yourself into it. Yiddishkeit is about effort. Effort is lasting. If you want to summarize the argument between the Karaites and Chazal and our sages, it's Yagaiti Matzasi Tamin. They said I don't put effort, I can still be successful. That was their attitude. That's why I don't want to have oral Torah. All I want is the written Torah because it's easy. You read it, what it says, you do. There's no deeper meaning behind it in their minds. And Chazal said, no. You know when you're successful? When you put an effort. In your own spiritual development, in your own work of sphira. When you try, when you don't get discouraged because you failed, and you keep on trying more and more, and you do your part, and it's difficult, that's when you're successful. And not just in self-development, in everything. In our learning, in our davening, in our kindness and that we do in helping others, it all has to be effort. And as Chazal tell us, if you'll try, you'll succeed. Thank you. Have a great Shabbos. Thanks for joining.